God, the Substance of All Form, a book by Joel S. Goldsmith. Chapter 5, Treatment as the Consciousness of Truth. Treatment is such a fundamental part of our work that unless it is understood correctly, we cannot develop the full consciousness of truth. You will find that, throughout my writings, I have stressed the importance of the correct presentation of the letter of truth and a correct understanding of the letter of truth. When this is gained, the spirit or consciousness of truth can follow. People sometimes think that I am so absolute that I do not give or believe in treatment. Nothing could be further from the truth. Treatment is a very important part of my day's work, and it will become an important part of your work if you understand the nature of treatment. In my writings, I make a distinction between treatment and prayer, but nowhere have I ever said that we do not use treatment. The procedure in treatment to which I object is the habit of mechanically repeating affirmations and denials in the belief that they are going to do something or that they will heal something. There is a difference between treatment and affirmation and denial. When an affirmation or denial is repeated over and over again, it becomes hypnotic, mere suggestion. And even when it produces results, it has not brought about a spiritual healing, but only a mental healing. These are two entirely different things. Mental healing is similar to physical healing. There may be a cure today, but tomorrow, next week, or next year, the condition may return. The condition has only been suggestionized out of thought, and it is just as easy to receive a suggestion that will produce the condition as to receive a suggestion that will cure it. Subchapter: Establish the truth of being in consciousness. The infinite way form of treatment is not meant to cure anything, nor to act upon thought as a suggestion of health until thought responds and says, "I am well." Our form of treatment is more a rehearsal of the truth of being, a translation of material or mental belief into the realization of spiritual truth. The words we speak or the thoughts we think do not constitute the healing power, but they are the step that will lift us up into the consciousness which does the healing work. From the moment we awaken in the morning until rest comes at night, we are meeting with suggestions from the world of sin, disease, lack, limitation, and finally death. There does not seem to be an hour during the day which is not filled with suggestions coming from the radio or the newspapers. Even if we do not read the newspapers or listen to the radio, these suggestions are in the air, finding lodgment in our thought. They seem to come to us almost faster than we can reject or refute them. Therefore, at the beginning of our ministry, at the beginning of our practice of this spiritual life, it is necessary that we make a conscious effort to refute these arguments or suggestions, not, however, in the sense of denial or saying that they do not exist, or of repeating over and over that they are not real. Let us refute them in the light of pondering spiritual truth. After years of practice and of meditation and realization, there comes a time when it is no more necessary to go around refuting human suggestions than it is necessary to go around declaring that 12 times 12 are 144. After we have been through elementary school and have memorized the multiplication table and have arrived at a certain point of development, we no longer need to go around reciting the multiplication table. Whenever we need the answer to a mathematical problem, it is instantly available. So in this, when we are faced with a problem, whether our own or that of a patient, friend, relative, or even of the nation or world, the answer is instantly available. But it is only after many, many years of pondering spiritual truths and years of practice in refuting the suggestions that come to us and finding the answer to them that we can finally say, I do not have to spend much time in the ordinary sense of treatment, or it is just as easy to take care of 100 patients in a day as it is 12. Let us understand this subject of treatment. Over and over again, I have said that we do not need to know the name of the patient. That is true. At no point, even in the earliest stages of practice, do we need to know the name or even the identity of the patient. If someone calls for help, we can give it without knowing who it is that is calling, or if someone calls for help for another, we do not have to ask who wants to help or even what the nature of the claim is. Subchapter: Stating the nature of the claim. Being told the nature of the claim, although not necessary, is sometimes helpful, particularly from the standpoint of the patient. Very often, a patient is carrying around in his thought a terrific fear of some condition, a condition he actually may think is present in the body. The condition may be entirely imaginative, or it may stem from some of the radio and newspaper reports he has heard or read. I have known many people who have been, quote, suffering, end quote, from cancer for years, and yet today they are just as hale and hearty as they were 18 years ago. There is a perennial fear of cancer, just as there is a perennial fear of consumption, polio, influenza, and pneumonia. Many people suffer pains which firmly convince them that they have this or that the matter with them, and very often, in talking about it to a practitioner, they are freed from the fear. By telling it, they get it out of their system, and knowing that someone else is going to take over, it is easier for them to drop it than it would be otherwise. Therefore, in cases of this nature, it is sometimes helpful to let the patient tell the nature of his claim if he wishes to do so. Here, however, the practitioner must be wise. Once it has been stated, he should not permit the patient to rehearse it over and over again. It must be dropped for the sake of the patient as well as the practitioner. In the second place, it may also be helpful to the practitioner to have the nature of the claim stated because, regardless of how far advanced the practitioner may be, every time anyone asks for help, something takes place in the consciousness of the practitioner. Whether it is happening consciously or not, something is taking place. For example, should someone telephone and say, "My arm is paralyzed," immediately, whether or not the practitioner consciously thinks it, there is a response within which recognizes consciousness as the cause and source of all action, not the body, not the muscles, and in that way there is a direct response to the claim of inaction or no action. Subchapter: Begin your treatment with the Word of God. The claim may be of some mental error, and then, too, something takes place in the thought of the practitioner relating to the idea that God, or divine wisdom, is universal intelligence, the only intelligence, and that the brain or body has no intelligence of its own. There is only one intelligence, and that is God. All this takes place in the practitioner's consciousness, either consciously or unconsciously, but it takes place. So for those not yet far enough along in this work to know that this does go on, even if not consciously, it becomes necessary for them to treat consciously. If the claim were one of mental deficiency, the person giving the treatment should realize, why, intelligence is God. It is not personal. There is no such thing as one person's having more intelligence than another. Intelligence is an activity of the one universal soul, and for that reason it is universal, impersonal, and impartial, equal in all spiritual being. All our trouble has arisen from the belief that there is a you and that there is an I separate from God, each one living his own life, each one dependent on his education or lack of education, on environmental circumstances, or upon national and international conditions. That is the belief. But the truth is that since God is all, since God is infinite being, God is never the victim of discord. That is a treatment to any situation. You can go through the whole category of human error, and by beginning with the word God, you can find the correct treatment for error of any nature. Always begin your treatment with the word God. If the claim or belief has to do with action or intelligence, you might immediately think of God as intelligence. And whatever you find God as intelligence to be, that is what the individual is. If the claim is one of fear of death, you would dwell on the idea of God as life. And whatever you find God to be as life, the individual is. Since life is immortal, eternal, and omnipresent, these qualities of life are true of the individual. That would be your treatment. When we have realized or voiced the truth about the problem, then is the time for us to sit back and take a listening attitude, as if now we have brought ourselves to that place of realization or awareness where we are going to receive an answer. We are waiting to receive an assurance that all is well, that our problem has been deposited in the right place to be taken care of. It is at that point, after the treatment has been given, that prayer begins. Prayer, as I understand it, is the Word of God. Prayer is not something you do. Prayer is something you become aware of. Prayer is the Word of God which comes to you. It is the still small voice, bringing you an assurance of harmony, peace, joy, power, dominion, health, wholeness, and abundance. Therefore, after you have given the treatment, whether it is for yourself or another, sit back quietly and open consciousness. Here I am, Father. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth, and wait for the answer to come. Subchapter: The Healing Consciousness. Above all, remember this: the least desire for personal gain, the least trace of selfishness, nullifies the whole procedure. There is nothing to be gained, and our work cannot be from the standpoint that there is. God is infinite being, infinitely disclosing, revealing, unfolding, manifesting, and expressing itself as you and as me. The only purpose of treatment, the only purpose of prayer, is for us to become consciously aware of the perfection which already exists. Anything that we become aware of as the truth about ourselves and our being must be understood to be the truth about everyone else. In other words, there cannot be a prayer for the sun to shine only in our garden. If there is to be a prayer about the sun shining, it must be about the sun shining, period. We must be willing for it to shine as much in our enemy's yard as in our own. While we are entertaining in thought some sense of enmity or hate, treatment or prayer is void. The Master Christian taught, quote, "Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift." End quote. Matthew 5:23 and 24. Quote, But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. End quote. Matthew 5:44. Quote, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee, until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. End quote. Matthew 18:21 and 22. Can you not see that without this quality of forgiveness, treatment or prayer is just a waste of time? Consciousness must be a transparency for God, and a transparency for God is universal, impersonal, and impartial. His rain falls alike on the just and the unjust. The teachings of the Master are full of love and forgiveness, with never a trace of judgment or condemnation. Remember in the case of the man born blind, when the disciples asked the Master who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind. Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents. And to the adulterous woman he said, Neither do I condemn thee. Nowhere in the Christ consciousness is there a possibility of any hate, envy, jealousy, or malice finding lodgment. A consciousness which entertains any of those traits is not a healing consciousness. The consciousness of a healer must be the consciousness of an individual who entertains no hate, envy, jealousy, or malice. It is easy to determine whether your treatment is going to be effective or whether you can do good healing work. How great a sense of personal hurt do you entertain in the world? I do not mean that in order to heal, we must have achieved the status of angels. We are still a little lower than the angels, and we may temporarily feel a little grudge against some political leader or even somebody down the street. But the main point is not to let these grudges go too deep. Get over them in a hurry, because they will keep us from doing good healing work. Consciousness must be a transparency for God, and inasmuch as God operates only as the consciousness of love, wherever the opposite qualities are entertained, there is no healing consciousness. Be perfectly willing for any truth you are knowing about yourself to be universally true. The question has been asked if I regard treatment as illumined reason, and I have pointed out that treatment would have to be illumined reason because the ordinary reason of the human mind would not be a very good treatment. In other words, treatment as illumined reason would be the realization of the presence of life, even where death appears to be. The reasoning mind would say, well, this is death, there is no use doing anything about it. But illumined reason would know that there never had been a death in the spiritual universe. Subchapter: Treatment necessary for all human appearances. Every appearance that comes to us from morning to night or from night to morning regarding the human scene needs treatment. Even when the appearance is good, it needs treatment. A person may be in perfect health this moment, and yet by tomorrow the entire picture may have changed. In the human scene, we might know a perfectly pure-minded and moral person today, and by tomorrow the whole situation might be reversed. Therefore, do not be satisfied to accept even a good human appearance, but translate that too into the spiritually real, of which the good is but the form. Realize that where the good human appearance is, actually God is. Any sense of goodness is not personal goodness. Any sense of health is not personal health. God is really the goodness, and God is really the health. Unless you recognize that, you can be tripped on the most vulnerable spot we all have, and that is being satisfied with human health or human wealth, good human appearances. Everyone in the world is healthy some of the time, but that does not prevent his being sick at another time. Therefore, the real treatment must not be reserved for such appearances as sin, disease, drunkenness, or accident, but you must always be alert so that you are not deceived by the appearance of even good or healthy humanity. Even in the midst of good, you can realize, I am not fooled by that appearance either. God is the real health and real goodness, and God is the permanency of health and goodness. In the metaphysical world, most treatment is reserved for sin, disease, lack, limitation, death. But in our work, just as much treatment is necessary for healthy or wealthy human appearances. Too much of human health and human wealth is here today and gone tomorrow. Your treatment is the realization that the human health or human wealth is not the reality, but that right there is the health and wealth of the one life, God, permanent, infinite, omnipresent, and omnipotent. That is your treatment to every human appearance. Treatment is necessary to every appearance until we become so firm in our consciousness of the reality of God that even when we are looking at healthy people, we are treating. We are not treating them, but we are treating our concept of what we see in them. The moment we observe a need, we are called upon for treatment. Why? We are not treating a person, we are treating our concept of what is appearing. God is infinite and is all. Therefore, all there is God, and we are never treating God, are we? But suppose we are seeing sick or sinning humanity out there. Is it actually out there to be treated, or is it in our concept of what is appearing? On this point, we differ from most metaphysical teachings because in some of them, students are instructed never to give anyone a treatment unless it is asked for. That is not true in the infinite way. We cannot and do not accept appearances. Every time any phase of error or even good presents itself to me, I consciously translate it and realize that right there is God manifest. If the individual is at all receptive, he will be healed, whether or not he knows that he has been given a treatment. But whether there is any receptivity in him or not, the important thing, as far as I am concerned, is that I have not accepted an appearance for reality. The treatment is just the same whether a person has asked for help or has not. Truth remains the same. There is not one truth for a person who knows enough to ask for help, and a different truth for one who does not. There is but one truth, and that is the truth that we must know in order that we may be free. End of chapter 5. Additional free content about the principles and application of the infinite way and general mystical practice is available for your use on the Practical Mysticism YouTube channel and at my website at the link in the notes. Please subscribe and share so together we can assist in the great awakening to truth. Thank you.